This is Lunchtime Agenda. Thanks for your company this afternoon. Now to the Coalition perspective on today's superannuation announcement. I spoke to the Shadow Assistant Treasurer, Senator Matthias Cormann, a bit earlier in the day. I began by asking Senator Cormann whether or not there should be a cap at some point when it comes to superannuation concessions.
Well, it's a complete breach of faith with the Australian people yet again. Only a few weeks ago, the Prime Minister made an emphatic promise in the Parliament that the government would never tax the super payments for the over 60s, and that is now today exactly what they've announced, albeit a tax on super payments to the over 60 through the back door.
Well, they're saying it's only prospective assessment. It won't be retrospective. People with already those assets in their funds. So how is that a broken promise?
Well, I mean, it will apply. Well, firstly, it's a broken promise because the Prime Minister made an emphatic promise in the Parliament, which repeated a promise that the Treasurer, Mr Swan, made on the 2nd of May 2010 when the government's response to the Henry Tax Review was released, and that was that the government would never tax the super payments to the over 60s. Now, what they've announced today is effectively a tax on super payments to the over 60s for people who are drawing a retirement income of more than $100,000 a year.
Do you believe, though, that there is a sustainability issue when it comes to tax concessions for superannuation, particularly in the context of the ageing population? Is there a sustainability issue that needs to be looked at?
It's in our national interest to encourage as many Australians as possible to save to achieve a self-funded retirement, to save to ensure that they can look after their own needs in retirement, and to continue to take the pressure of the age pension. What is not in our national interest is the constant chopping and changing that we've seen to superannuation under the current government. What is not in our national interest is the constant class war attack that Julia Gillard and Wayne Swan have been waging against those Australians who are doing the right thing by saving for their own retirement.
The industry seems to be happy with it, though. Pauline Vamos from the ASFA organisation, the Association of Superannuation Funds, welcomes the government's announcement. She's issued a statement. I'll read a little bit of it to you. She says, "We've consistently said that with an ageing population, there need to be adjustments made to ensure we meet the demands this will place on government budgets in the future." As I say, she says that this has ended the hysteria, and she welcomes the government's announcement. What do you say to that support from the industry itself?
Well, I mean, parts of the industry today are clearly relieved that the government has been shamed into a back down away from the worst parts of the worst aspects of what they had in store for people across Australia saving for their retirement for now. And I guess the important point here is that this is just a tactical retreat from a government that is under pressure, clearly under public pressure over its bungled approach to the superannuation issue as to so many other issues. They've gone for a tactical retreat. If Labor was re-elected at the next election, there is no doubt in my mind that they would revisit all of the worst aspects of what they were looking at in terms of targeting people's superannuation savings with increased taxes.
But this is an unequivocal endorsement from the industry today. How do you argue with that?
No, well, there is no unequivocal endorsement from the industry today. I mean, you've read out a press release from one association, and as I say, you know, we all know that Julia Gillard, Wayne Swan, Bill Shorten have been looking at some very nasty tax increases targeting people saving for their retirement. They've been shamed into a back down away from the worst aspects of what they were looking at. So parts of the industry are clearly relieved by the fact that the government appears to have backed down on some things for the moment. But we know, of course, that this is a government which has made a complete mess of the budget. It is a government that is desperate for more cash, and we have no doubt that on top of the broken promise today, where the government is now proposing to tax super payments to the over 60s through the back door, that Labor, if Labor was re-elected at the next election, would revisit all of those things that they've been looking at over the last few months.
All right, I want to ask you about some comments made by Tony Abbott in which he said this morning every time a government raids people's funds, there are shades of Cyprus about it. Is that language really appropriate? Doesn't that talk down the Australian economy far too much?
Well, that language is absolutely appropriate. I mean, the government today has announced that they intend to change the tax arrangements and impose a new tax in relation to funds that are already in the system. And of course, that is a retrospective tax effectively, and that is, of course, exactly what has been happening in Cyprus.
And finally, Senator Cormann, I want to ask you about the report on the front page of the West Australian today that the Coalition's going to support the extension of the petroleum resource rent tax to onshore projects. Doesn't that reflect a change of heart from the Coalition, given your own criticism of that extension in that Senate report back in 2011?
Well, let's be very clear. The Coalition is totally committed to scrap the mining tax, the minerals resource rent tax. As you know, I chaired a number of Senate inquiries into the government's mining tax package. And yes, we recommended that the package as a whole be scrapped. However, in recent months, the Australian Petroleum Production and Exploration Association, as the industry body for the oil and gas sector, has said to us that they're happy with the petroleum resource rent tax, which is, of course, a tax that's been in place for a very long time and which the government has extended onshore. And so on the basis, I mean, if the industry is happy, then obviously we're not going to go out of our way to scrap a tax which the industry is happy with. Let me just make the point, though, that according to Treasury's own advice to Senate estimates, the onshore extension of the PRRT is not expected to raise any revenue whatsoever, at least over the current forward estimates.
So you're happy to accept one part of the minerals resource rent tax package, but not the rest?
No, not at all. Like the minerals resource rent tax package will go. We will scrap the mining tax. We will scrap the minerals resource rent tax and everything that is attached to it, with the exception of the increase of compulsory super from 9 to 12%. What we have said is that the petroleum resource rent tax, which has been in place for a very long time and which the government has extended onshore, given that the industry has said to us that they're happy with it, that they're relaxed about it, then we're relaxed about keeping it.
Senator Cormann, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Good to talk to you.